black woman.
On this powerful episode of IJS, Two Black Women with Opinions, we're honored to welcome Loretta J. Ross, a legendary activist, author, and MacArthur Fellow. Loretta's activism began in her youth, fighting for women's rights at the very first rape crisis center in the U.S. in 1978. From there, she has spent decades dismantling white supremacy, creating the National Reproductive Justice Collective Sister Song, and leading human rights efforts that have left a lasting mark on the fight for justice. In this conversation, Loretta shares her wisdom alongside Jan Robinson Flint, Executive Director of Black Women for Wellness, as they discuss the intersection of their work and the importance of building community and coalitions to advance reproductive justice. Together, they emphasize how the work of organization, healing, and fighting for reproductive rights is a lifelong commitment to collective power. Loretta's new book, Calling In, offers a framework for engaging with others in a way that transforms conflict into conversation, urging us to reconnect, build bridges, and stand together in the fight for health and justice. Join us as Loretta and Jan share their passion for movement building, coalition work, and reproductive justice, and inspire us all to take action for a more equitable future.
My name is Jan Robinson Flynn. I'm the Executive Director of Black Women for Wellness, and I'm pleased to be here with Loretta Ross, who is a reproductive justice icon, founding mom, and professor at, which college is that, Smith?
Smith College.
Smith.
And Yale University. Actually, I got double appointments.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you about that in a minute. So you're doing two pieces at one time. Tonight, we at Black Women for Wellness have a podcast called I'm Just Saying, Two Black Women with Opinions. And before you, Two Black Women with Opinions. So we will be recording, and thank you all for cooperating on that. It will also be doing a book signing. This is how we happen to catch Loretta Ross in town in Los Angeles. So we'll let her do some only remarks. I'm going to ask you to knowing questions, real easy stuff. And then we'll dive deeper into what's in the book and this notion around calling out. So is this your first book signing?
No, this is probably number 9 or 10 in the last couple of weeks. But my first book signing...
I go way back to some other books since you had published.
This is book number 5
Yeah.
for me. I've written other books or co-written other books on reproductive justice, because that's what I'm mainly known for. But this was a book that I felt compelled to write. And I felt compelled to write it because I noticed how unbelievably people were behaving on social media. I think people were saying things on social media they didn't have the courage to say to people's faces. And so when I asked the young people in my life what was going on, they said, "Oh, that's the call-out culture."
Uh-huh.
I said, "Y'all named it?" They said, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, what are y'all doing about it?" And they shrugged like it was as inevitable as gravity. And that answer didn't sit well with me because I'd made a career having conversation with a whole lot of people I would not bring on for dinner.
Yes, you have. Let's talk a little bit about your bio. Yeah. But I'm going to go back also to let you answer that. What happened at that first book signing, and when did that come out? And then we'll talk about call out culture, but also we'll look at your bio because you have a very deep bio in terms of the research that you have done with those people you went and invited home to dinner or asked them for a walk in the park.
A whole little walk. I want to meet them in the back dark alley either.
Yeah. So, but in all to get information that we can use in a reproductive justice movement and a liberation movement, because it is more than reproductive justice. It is looking at that human rights framework that you helped shape to make sure there's a foundation of reproductive justice. So tell us a little bit about that bio in terms of the research you have done that brought you here today.
Well, I consider myself an accidental activist. I went to college at 16, majoring in chemistry and physics, so I thought I was going to be spending my life in a laboratory somewhere. And it didn't help that I was a total introvert. I mean, my best friends were books. I didn't even like people that much. But when I got to Howard University in 1970, it was like, woo, because the civil rights movement was going on, radical consciousness was developing, and so it was like an awakening for me at Howard University. And I remember the first time I got tear gas, I was at my Meridian Hill dormitory on the rooftop, pelting the police with stones and glasses and stuff, because we naively thought that tear gas canisters couldn't reach the rooftops. We were wrong. The point they could reach a 6-foot building. I mean, it only has 6 floors. And so, but it was Howard University. We learned to protest apartheid. We even had shut down the campus one time because we got tired of the chicken they were selling. The Howard University must have a chicken farm because we get chicken every day. But there was substance behind it. In 1970, all the female students had to take a health and hygiene course under the assumption that black girls didn't know how to keep our bodies clean. Where all the male students had to take ROTC under the assumption that they needed to be groomed for serving in the military.
Oh, I thought this to defend black women. No, they're not. I saw you joking, right? That ends up. But, and I'm thinking about that in the sense of, I think many generations before us had a struggle to fight, right? Was it changing college campuses? Was it anti-apartheid? Was it civil rights? We all had that fight that we had to do in our generation in that 20-something era, right? And now I look at the 20-somethings now they have a fight, right? They have a fight to regain some of the ground that we had won and lost. Right? So I think that, to me, that's the role of college, is to build your muscle to secure liberation, right? Because what is there? Freedom doesn't defend itself. Have to keep it moving.
Well, what I'm looking at what's happening with the resurgence of fascism, because, fascism was actually Jim Flake here. In the genocide against Native Americans and the enslavement of Africans. I mean, Hitler came here to study what we did. And so with resurgence of fascism, I delight in telling students that you might have thought you were too young to sit in on those lunch counters of the 50s and get pelted with stuff and spit upon. But this is your lunch counter moment now.
This is your lunch counter moment now?
And now the real question is, what are you going to do? Are you going to stand on the side of justice, which is not a safe place to stand? Or are you going to stand on the side of the oppressors, which in my mind is even less safe place to stand? And so, don't think all of this stuff happened before you were born.
Oh, no.
This stuff is happening right now.
Every generation has a struggle. Every generation.
The best of my bio, when you can fit the ass up, because, like I said, I'm an accidental activist. But one of the things that permeated my story was not having control over my body. Because I was incested when I was in high school, had a baby through that incest. And my only choice then was to give him up for adoption or keep him, and I chose to keep him. So that ended up with me co-parenting with my rapist. And they quite how anybody wants to become a mother, and it took rape. And then, trying not to get pregnant again, I accepted implantation of the Dow Shield when I went to Harvard University. which was a defective intrauterine device that I defected by IUD. So that is a sterilizing me. And so my body kept getting in the way of my ambitions. And so that's what led me to thinking deeply about reproductive justice in 1994, when 12 black women, of which I was one, created the framework. Because in the pro-choice movement, people were only fighting for the right not to have a child. And we had to fight for the right as black women to have the children that we wanted to have, and then control the conditions under which we would raise those children. And then even talk about issues of bodily autonomy and sexual pleasure, gender identity, and all of those things. So when we created reproductive justice in 1994, it went way beyond that pro-choice, pro-binary that has so stifled any real expansion of what we need for true human rights. And then you mentioned the phrase human rights. Reproductive justice, when we first created it, didn't actually contain human rights. That was in June of 1994, July of 1994. But 3 months later, I went to the International Conference on Population Development in Cairo, Egypt. And what I discovered there was that women from the global south were using the human rights framework in a way that we were trying to uneasily fit our rights into the U.S. Constitution, which, of course, is an uneasy fit because there is no human right to health care or education or any of those things in the U.S. Constitution. So when I came back from Egypt, I decided that I would underpin the legal and the norm-setting regime of human rights under this emerging reproductive justice framework. Because actually, the way I see it, reproductive justice is the process, but the goal is human rights. You can get to human rights working on environmental justice, education justice, health justice, all those justice frameworks and all lead into the same thing, human rights.
So I need some clarity now, Jim Program. So one of the things that I thought was the timeline of the reproductive justice movement is that the conference in Cairo happened first.
That's because Loretta's a bad memory.
Okay.
I made that error like a Xerox copy. It's been repeated, and repeated. When I first wrote my first article about understanding reproductive justice,
Okay.
I did not consult my papers at Smith College. And so I wrote that we went to Cairo first, and then we created reproductive justice. But it wasn't until I actually looked at the records, I'm like, oops. And so since then, I've tried to correct the record. Okay. But that first article is the one that keeps getting copied over and over and over again. So I take full responsibility for creating that messed up timeline. But I was writing it 13 years after we had done it. So in 2007, so I'm just, you asked, Kyla's the memory is.
But well, you got a lot go beyond,
Right.
But memory days.
And it was Jody Bond, one of the co-creators, was me, said, Loretta, you've been saying this wrong. Oh, let me show you the data. And so I've tried to correct my own errors.
So then my question, Dan, two questions. So what was the inspiration then for those black women to come together and say, okay, we need a reproductive justice movement because we're trying to do something different. We want to be healthy when we have children. We want to have children, not just the right not to have children. So what was the inspiration, given that it wasn't the Cairo Conference on Populations?
Well, in July of 1994, the Illinois Pro-Choice Alliance sponsored a conference. And the purpose of the conference was talking about President Clinton's attempt to do health care reform back then. And he had Hillary Clinton lead the effort.
Who don't believe in you?
Yes, but we've been trying to do health care reform since Franklin Roosevelt days, so, Republicans always get in the way. But anyway, when the Clinton administration made its presentation on health care reform, for some reason, because they always seem to always have real bad strategy, they decided that they omitted reproductive health care and health care reform. They could get it past the Republicans. However suspect that was as a strategy, because the Republicans aren't asleep, they were going to oppose health care reform no matter what you put in it. But what didn't make sense to us is that, why don't you come to a feminist conference with a health care plan that omits reproductive health care, when reproductive health care is the main reason women go to the doctor? So basically, you present a male-centric health care plan to us and say, just hold your nose and support it. And we were like, hell to the no. So Mabel Thomas, who was a state representative in Georgia at the time, assembled us in a room. Us was 12 black women who happened to be at this top with 200 people. It's in Chicago, right? And said, well, what are we going to do about this? This is not making sense. And the first conversation we had was examining why abortion care was always exempted from medical care. As if you go to a plumber to have your pipes fixed or something.
And Bill's kitchen, but not the bathroom.
Right. And so we wanted to embed all conversations on abortion in a social justice framework. And the way I said it at the time, and I repeat it often, every time a woman is facing an unintended pregnancy, she has what we call these oh my God moments. Because before she even knows she's actually pregnant, she's like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Can I stay in school? Well, I'm going to tell my mom. What do I tell my partner? Can I even keep my job? Do I have health care? Do I have a paper to put this child in? All of those oh my God questions are human rights issues.
They go rapidly through your head.
Right. And so we analyzed that both the pro-life and the pro-choice movement started with the pregnancy instead of going upstream to answer the oh my God questions. Because it's the answers to those oh my God questions that determine whether an unplanned pregnancy turns into a baby or an abortion. Because you got bad answers to the oh my God question, even a planned pregnancy will turn into an abortion. But if she's got good answers to those oh my God questions, then an unattended pregnancy is going to end up in a baby. So go upstream. And so we spliced together the concept of social justice and reproductive rights. And that's where the phrase reproductive justice came from, because we wanted to push back at both the pro-choice and the pro-life movement who started at the pregnancy. Why not start with the woman's life before she became pregnant?
Yeah, I often think, why can't we have help really soon? And that we heard.
Right. Like the midlives of the community is the, deliver from birth to death. They took care of us.
So, and that kind of leads me, and we'll get around to the calling in and calling out culture, because so as Black women contemplated that this reproductive health and rights movement didn't consider a factor in our basic human rights. Did white women sell us out? Because it feels like that has happened again and again. And that's where I'm getting to the calling in and calling out. Because if at that point in 1994 and 95, the conversation was, we did not feel included. We being Black women, not seeing.
I have to stop you right there, Jan. That is a mistaken impression of why we created reproductive justice as a way to push against white women. We did not create reproductive justice to push against white women. We created reproductive justice to center ourselves in the land. We were indifferent to what white men were doing. It was not about white women. And we wanted to create a framework about white women. We would have had to put white women in the frame.
But we were centered.
We centered ourselves to say, what do Black women need from health care reform policy? That was our goal conversation. Now, there is this stereotype that because it was created by black women in a context of white supremacy, we must have been pushing against the pro-life and pro-choice.
But is it necessary to push against them? Because if we could, if sit,
Reasons, but that's not why reproductive justice was created. Yeah, there's a lot of reason to problematize frameworks that don't include us. But that moment in 1994, that was not that moment. Because it wasn't about what we were against, it was about what are we for black women. The right to have a child, the right to not have a child, and the right to raise our children in safe and healthy environment. That was the entire conversation. It really was not about what either of the other sides are doing that wrong, except starting with the pregnancy. That was the only thing we said.
So fast forward from 94 to the 2025 Loretta. How are we centering black women in that reproductive justice movement?
Oh, I don't think we have to work to center ourselves because we are the leading theorists and implementers. You know, you don't have to fight for your place in the sun when you want the sun. I think reproductive justice as a framework has transformed reproductive politics in the whole United States.
Do you think it might have been hijacked a little bit?
Hijacked? You know, Endozaki wrote a sign that said, just because you stole it don't make it yours. So let's be clear. I love reproductive justice because of its infinite adaptability. When Native American women use it, they talk about sovereignty issues that we don't talk about. When immigrant women use it, they talk about birthright citizenship that a U.S. citizen doesn't have to talk about. When white women use it, they talk about the pro-choice movement in a way that we don't have to do that. So I really think that it's very possible for black women to create universal theory that's applicable to everybody, with us getting defensive about all these other interpretations of it, because that's what makes it universal.
I do think that black women are GMS. I did.
Yeah, we heard of intersectionality, another one of those universal theories.
Right. Yeah, bringing in, and I want to talk about layers also, but I also know that many a day and many a time our genius is stolen or borrowed. And so when else's name gets on it, and
That's the Elvis effect.
it be Elvis back, right? Where it's like we have to remind folks, no, this was the Jews and white folks that came up with that. And I think that's some of, from my chair, what is going on with reproductive justice at this point in time.
I decided a long time ago that I would not get defensive about the ownership of reproductive justice. As a matter of fact, the people work in capitalism so that we should pack you a phrase so that nobody could use it without our permission and all of that. I'm like, that's not how you offer genius to the intellectual commons. It ain't genius if you got a pack it. It's genius because it transforms because of the strength of the work, not who owns it. And so we chose not to do that. Ellie Bruce did try to fact, but that's a whole other conversation. But I love the way it has transformed all these people who are trying to say, oh, yeah, the mainstream organizations now trying to embrace reproductive justice. That's a compliment, not an insult, and it doesn't ignore the fact that they're better positioned to get the funding using our framework than we are. That's just white supremacist capitalism.
Which is alive and
Right, so I'm not denying that at the same time. I love it the way my friend and your cousin, Dazon Dixon Jalop, says it. When you think of humanity being birthed in Africa, everybody on earth is a cousin, girl. Just meaning degrees removed. And that's the worldview reproductive justice takes. You got some good cousins. You got some problematic cousins. You got some cousins that you don't want to invite to the picnic. All of that's true.
Yes, yes.
But our position always has to be to keep the whole humanity in our view and treat everybody as if they're cousins, even if some of them don't deserve that kind of respect and treatment. Let's take that in.
Okay.
And actually believe that human life began in Africa. How can we not see ourselves in all our relations? Despite these bullshit systems that they
All right, yeah. It's
there's lots of this they made up.
Because just dealing with the, that's what reality. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And that's why I said, let's get to calling in and calling out. Because many times, some of our cousins do not get an invite to cookout. And they don't get that invite because they have been acting out or so contrary to a movement for liberation that you don't want to let them in for the drama, the stress, or the sabotage. Okay? So how do we define calling in and calling out? How are we defining accountability for allies and partners? And then how do we hold folks who are just not going to be right at a distance where they do not express their peace?
I had to write this book from the perspective of being a recovering call-out queen. I love putting people on blast. I love effing people up with my tongue. I love it so much. And I'm good at it. You know, because when you have that thick intellect, you just slice them down and they won't even know they've been here. And it took me many years to realize that while I felt good about my ability to use my power to humiliate, put people down, it really achieved what I wanted it to achieve. So there's something to be said about doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And so I began to question my use of the call-out culture. And it backfired on me in a spectacular way. You made me remember this. While I was at Sister Saul as its national coordinator, a young woman of color boldly claimed on social media that she had invented reproductive justice. And this was like about 13, 14 years after the invention. So she wasn't even allowed, right? But she was a young woman trying to make her mark in the movement. I felt so hurt by that perceived intellectual theft. You know, she claimed it on social media. I'm going to get on social media and claim, call her out for it. Except I for heck like that. A woman 40 years younger than me can cry better on social media. Right, and so I became her bully. And the whole movement asked me why was this elder in the movement going around bullying this 20-year-old, calling her out, shaming her, humiliating her. And in my trauma, I was more invested in how I heard versus what was going on with her. Because I could have stopped and put myself on pause, which is what I tell people in my book. Don't lead with your trauma, lead with your intelligence. I could have stopped and asked myself, why is this 20-year-old claiming to have invented something that happened 13 years old because she would have had to be 12, but she admitted it. And why is she telling such an obvious lie to the community she's trying to get respect in? And what should be my response as an elder watching this child self-destruct? Instead of calling her out, I should have called her up and asked her what's going on. Right. But meanwhile, my reputation was for several years that I didn't like bringing up young people in the movement.
You the hostile elder. No.
Right. I'm the elder that keeps the other people from growing in the movement, getting their face in the sun. You know, that act hurt me and it hurt Sister Song. Because it wasn't true, but my call-out behavior. The credence to that. And so I apologized to that ghetto woman because I made her fine. That was not my intention. But I also used this book to review every kind of mistake I'd never made in the doing movement work and showing people what I've learned from it. And you can make your own mistakes if you want to, but I hope you make new ones, because I'm sure that takes up the prison industrial complex. Because doesn't prisons act like that? They silence people. They exile them. They dispose of them. Like they use tissue. So how are the master's tools, says in Audre Lorde's birthday today, but it is simple, the master's house. And then calling in the third of my 5 C's I analyzed is actually a call out, dumb as well. So you're still seeking accountability like with the first 2, but instead of using anger, blaming, and shaming, you're using love and respect. So instead of saying, I can't believe you said that, or you used the word, or you misgendered me, you can just say something like, you know, that's an interesting choice that you make. You might be talkable about it. I used to get people to the pronouns wrong all the time, and this is what I wanted. That kind of thing. And sometimes it's just reinterpreting what I call bad kahuas. I teach this stuff online in my $5 classes. So on my website, you find those.
We have to make sure we mention that so I can do that.
But in my online class, a blind participant spoke up and said that every time she goes to step through a door or up a step, some arm comes out of nowhere, places it on her body. And since she's a sexual assault survivor, she goes ballistic because she can't see it coming. It's just so straight with her hands on her. And so she said, what can I do with that, Loretta? Because nobody likes feeling assaulted all the time. And so I asked her, why wouldn't you put that in a calling in framework? That's just an example of bad kindness. Kindness done badly. And what you do with the calling in culture is that you want to emphasize the good people need to do instead of always harping on the bad. And so I said, first, thank the person for their efforts for being kind. That you want more of that kind of kindness in the world, particularly in the truth. We want more kindness. Second, set your boundary on. Tell the person, you know, since I'm lying, I don't like strangers putting their hands on me. So don't do that anymore, right? And the third, this is the call-in. But if you want to help a blind person in the future, can we talk about what you get the next? Right? So you turn the call out into a call, and you set your boundary, you reward the kindness, and you hopefully prevent that bad kindness from reappearing in the future. We can all do that. It ain't that deep. But when we leave with our trauma, we go ballistic. When we leave with our integrity and our intelligence, we see that other human being as the same human being with the same human rights we have. So you don't assume the worst intention. You don't go around brutalizing people like, you know, that tools of hurt people.
Yes.
You have control on how you show up. One of my favorite things in the book that I write is that you can say what you mean and you can mean what you say. But you don't have to say it me. That's a choice. And don't pretend that it ain't. You know, if you choose to brutalize somebody with your point of view, that's a choice you're making. And then you wonder why nobody wants to trust you. Well, when you brutalize people, you're making yourself untrustworthy. I don't care how righteous you think you are, how right your paws in. Nobody likes being shamed and blamed.
What's that side punch?
Huh?
What's that side punch?
I call it punching sideways. But in our movement, a lot what we do is that we call outs are totally appropriate when you're calling out people who have power. who abuse their power over other people. And they've been given a chance to change and they choose not to. So that's what we do in the human rights movement. We call out individuals or corporations or countries that abuse power over people, and they know better. They know they can do better. But the point that many people miss is that the calling out should be the tactic of last resort. It should be the last thing you pull out of the toolbox. And once you call somebody out, all you done is invite them to a fight, not a conversation. So if you're at the end of that relationship with that country, that politician, or that corporation, fight it fun. But if you ever want to have any influence with them, if you ever want to have a conversation with them, try either calling them in, or something Renee Taylor created the wonderful concept of calling on.
Tell me what's coming on.
Calling on is when you want to hold someone accountable and you want them to do better, but you're not going to invest your time or attention into making them do so. It's your talk to the hand strategy, right? And I love the way young people call on people. Because, you know, a young person look you dead in the eye and say, "Are you okay?" And that is not asking about your health. All right? They're saying, you ain't okay. You need to back up. You need to get out of my place, and you need to check yourself. I say all of that in 3 words. Are you okay? Oh, they're calling on this box. And the reason we need to use that more often is that people often have a better inner opinion of themselves than they're displaying on the outside. And so when you're calling in a friend or a relative or somebody you know, you can always call on them to do better. Because you can say, "I know you're a good woman. I see you bring the right potato salad to the picnic, and you care about people. I even see how well you take care of your cat. So why is this weird thing in you that makes you talk bad about people you don't even know? Help me understand. Are you the good person that brings us potato salad? Or are you the bad person going around here causing all this hate? Which one are you?" Because a lot of people don't take responsibility for how their inner Trump shows up.
Saying they're it Trump.
Oh, so got put. Oh, hell yeah.
You ain't human if you ain't got an inner Trump.
Inner insecurity that have been programmed into.
I'm asking insecure.
But to see what I'm saying,
What we benefit from that he obviously has not is people who loved and supported and helped us start the pathway to yield. He ain't never had that interested in it. I mean, if Trump was to get hit by a car, I care and gonna give it some help, but that's about the extent that I cares about his humanity. Because he just doesn't have those human qualities that attract me to another human being. But I don't believe that most of us are trying to outro Trump. I think most of us are just regular people trying to take care of our family, trying to read the right thing, trying to get the cashier back too much change if she gave us too much money without everybody making us do it. I mean, that's who we are.
I think there are human beings in the world. I do. And I do think that many people, and not all, and I don't think the majority of people do try to walk from a space of humanity and kindness. Right. That's the majority. And I also think that just with this whole thing of calling out and community, what I see is, I'm going to call it, a person will get called out, and then there will be people who gang up, right? Where everybody calls out that person to a point where they are harmed and they are hurt and they are traumatized and put out of the loop or put out of being the activist.
Or the church, without the church, but I've done a lot of stuff.
Yeah. And that's the part that I am very concerned about, just in terms of, if I can learn a called-in culture, that doesn't mean that that's still that gang up, or where people gang up on folks, because we have seen folks who have been in the movement been kicked right out, just sidelined and belly up. And then when you say, well, maybe they shouldn't be sidelined.
Then they'll jump on you for coming to the defense of them.
Yeah. And how we began to weave those folks back into the movement because we need their skill, their expertise, their wisdom, their insights, and we need to give people grace and forgiveness.
You should have read wrote the books.
I'm waiting for you to tell me how do you do that.
Well, first of all, when I study all the writers or philosophers and everybody were talking about the defensive society, we're in a blah, 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 they all basically said this is not a sustainable society. I agree. But then I said, well, what are we supposed to do about it? The best advice I saw was meditation. I'm like, that don't work for me. You know, every time I chant, I go to sleep. I mean, I don't know how are we supposed to do this. And so I wanted to orient my book into the first half of it being an analysis of the problem, and the second half, what to do about it. And that's when the intellectual biography we care. When did I mess up calling somebody out? What happened to me when I got called out? What happened to me when I messed up and got kicked out the movement? How did I re-injure? All of those kinds of things to show that we can create an actual human rights movement that allows room for people to grow. Because people can't grow without the space to grow. You know, if we treat every mistake as a 3-alarm fire, we're going to be organizing a very small cult. You know, because we don't allow people this chance to make mistakes, make reparations for the mistakes that they've made, and then make a plan for doing better. For me, actually, it all starts with how you handle your mistakes. And we all make them. We don't, everybody can fix mistakes. But if you handle your mistakes as a child, if you deny that you made a mistake, that you're responsible for harming somebody else, and you don't have a plan for fixing that, then that increases the chance that I was all want to call you out. But if you handle your mistakes as an adult, admit you made a mistake, own that you need to do better, and make a plan for doing better, then I'm going to invest in you to call you in. But the thing that I noticed in doing my research is that those patterns are set in us as children. Because if you got punished and humiliated for making a mistake as a child, then you're going to think it's natural to do that to somebody else. That's the only way you know. Then you are taught self-forgiveness, so you can't forgive other people.
Well, they weren't forgiven. You weren't forgiven. They were very true.
Yeah, and very true. And so the choice for us as adults is to decide whether we're going to continue those toxic patterns of our childhood or not. Or are we going to make choices not to be mean just because someone was mean to us? Those are always choices. And so when people are kicked out of the movement, I frankly offer a critique of a movement that calls itself a movement that's actually more like a cause, a groupthink. Because I've often said, you know, when many different people move think many different thoughts, but they move in the same direction, that's a movement. So when many people think one thought and they move in the same direction, that's a cult. So why are you using cult-like tactics calling yourself organizing and building a movement? And so one of the other points I made is where call-outs about power and not the purpose of the movement. And that's something I also did wrong. So every mistake I did, I put it as a book and pay my therapist a lot of money.
But now you can know all that.
But let me tell you, I was 14 years old. 10th grade of high school, I was killed in 1968. It was a very turbulent year for me because it was a year of pregnancy and everything. But I went to a predominantly white high school in San Antonio, Texas. And somehow, accidentally, none of the black girls who tried out for the cheerleading squad ever made it. Except that just happened to never make the cheerleading squad.
That sounds like Texas. You have to
Sounds like America, and it just says,
but didn't you really have to sue Jacksonville?
Right.
So anyway, so my dad had been in the military. He was a lifer, 26 years in the Army. So I knew about the ROTC, the Reserve Officers Training Corps. So I proposed to the school authorities that I start a girls' drill team because we already had a boys' drill team, right? And I could take the ROTC manual and teach people how to do hip train with rifle stocks and do all the intricate stuff. But I made sure those dance steps were so raunchy. Only the black and Mexican girls qualified. Got them little friends, Southern girls, wasn't gonna jerk their hips and do all that stuff that we were doing, right?
Times have changed.
And I realized as I was writing this book that I was going about the right thing the wrong way. But because all black girls were being discriminated against in my school, I created a system to discriminate against all the white girls in my school. Now, I'm not gonna, give myself, I was 14. So, racial justice politics were not on my mind in a significant way. I mean, maybe I could have appealed to other students in the school. I could have done a whole lot of other stuff. But revisiting that memory made me realize that in your call-outs about power and not purpose.
Now, see, I thought you were just trying to center black women. I'm with you with that movement.
No, I was trying to get back at the white cheerleader coaches.
Okay.
But I just went about it the wrong way.
We have a Black Widow for Wellness because we center Black Widow.
If I'm considering black, but I'm considering black women doesn't mean to ignore other people who are just as human as you are. You consider yourself without having to put other people down. That's the problem of white supremacy. They don't know how to be proud to be white without putting everybody else down. We can't reverse that and make any sense without replicating white supremacy.
Man.
I know.
So I had
I'm controversial.
back this it's so intersectionality. So when I think about the layers of the justice movement, I think that center of four layer we're talking about reproductive justice. We're talking about returning to health, and you're talking about sexually transmitted infections and things as my boy on the base will say, they come to the key. And then I think of that second layer is when we go outside the refugee area, what we talk about breast health or heart health or those type of things. There's still public health issues. There's still human rights issues because we're talking about access to health, basic health. And then there's the next layer, right? When we move outside and start talking about social justice movements and human rights movements and civil rights and voting rights and that type of thing, because they are so intertwined. And I think Mississippi gave us the real example of how voting rights and reproductive justice are getting tried when we started looking at that vote campaign around.
We just went ahead and listen campaign around personally.
Oh, yeah. So when we're looking at intersectional and layering, how do we get to weave those layers into the reproductive justice movement, which may or may not be still grappling with how we call people in as opposed to isolating and call themselves?
Well, our response to your questions actually may surprise you. Because I've been not only rethinking reproductive justice, but I've also been rethinking our response to the attack on DEI. And those are merging in my head. And the reason they're merging is because I believe the solution to both is teaching people about human rights. Human rights, of course, are 8 categories: civil, political, economic, social, cultural, environmental, sexual, and developmental, and the newest digital and scientific. But anyway, I think one of the things that drives the attack on DEI, besides the overall framework of neoliberal capitalism and white supremacy, but what really drives it is that EEI is seen as an identity-based framework that if you don't have certain identities, you're not included. I think a lot of people resent that, right? Because they're like, I'm not queer, I'm not black, I'm not a woke, whatever in this process. And see, the beauty of switching from EEI to human rights is that everybody's got the same human rights. Nobody's more human than anybody else. But you use intersectionality, that phrase you just used, to determine what somebody needs to pay attention to get to those same human rights. The way I would put it is that every child has a right to an education, but applies shouting at your boogers and braille. You pay attention to her vulnerability so that she can get to the same human rights as the sighted child. Well, a black child may need more funding for public schools in their area, but that white rural child needs more attention paid to the digital divide because they can't get on the internet. You pay attention to the vulnerabilities so that they can have the same human rights as people without those vulnerabilities. And the beauty of pivoting to the human rights framework is not only is it inclusive, but it makes the opponents of DEI go on the defensive because they have to explain why they're opposed to new rights. Why are now opposed to a framework that includes everybody, including your ass? And Lord knows, a lot of these insecure billionaires got some serious vulnerabilities because they wouldn't be misusing their money for such evil things. But I'm not trying to cure it, Elon Musk. I ain't got enough human empathy for that right now. I just wish they'd go back to building museums and stop trying to build big dicks to themselves.
For me, I think we happen to get that rocket ship to Mars or the moon. It just let it be one way. Yeah, one way.
Well, there was a joke on the internet the other day that I had to laugh. They said 50 years ago we put men on the moon. Why didn't we stop? It's solitary world we could have had and we had just completed the climax. But anyway, that's since I'm looking at. Even anyway, I think that I'm increasingly advising people who are in defense of DEI to go up the offense with human rights. Because the other beauty of the human rights framework is that it's 75 years old. There are ratified treaties that support it. Ratification took a 2/3 vote of the Senate. That just can't be undone by presidential executive order or edict. We just can't do it in the round around a Senate ratified treaty according to Article 6 of the U.S. Constitution that said when the Senate ratifies the treaty is the same as if the Senate passed a new law. We could box these dummies up if we knew how to effectively use the human rights framework, both in our advocacy but in our legal cases as well. And they take advantage of the fact that for 75 years, Republicans have refused to allow us to do human rights education in the U.S. educational system. But the antis use human rights much more depthly than me do, claiming the human rights for the preborn. They won't even allow the human rights of the people who already care. They take advantage of our ignorance. And so I've been really rethinking about intersectionality, vulnerability, reproductive justice, and DEI. They said, there is a gift we've been offered that we're failing to use. The first time human rights was demanded by black folks was 1858, when Frederick Douglass protested the lynching of a black man in New York City. That was 90 years before the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was even written. So we as black folks have been advocating for human rights for centuries. And I'm just disappointed that we on the left think we're too good to learn from our ancestors.
Well, I think that's a failing of the education system. And ego.
I mean, you could be ill-educated and still know that there's more you need to learn.
Questions. I hear you say you've been rethinking some of this and thinking back up. I hear you say you've been rethinking DEI, human rights framework. So has some of that time for rethinking been because you are the 5 G's sorority?
Oh no, they have bad criteria that they gave me at MacArthur. Oh no, I thought it was just funny so you could think. Oh no, because I got 6 jobs, so obviously I didn't use the award to stop and think. Um, no, I shouldn't diss MacArthur that way. I was surprised when they called me and told me I got me an award because I thought they were fucking me. Really, I hung up on them. Really, I'm driving to work to teach. And they said, this is the MacArthur Foundation. We'd like to talk to Loretta Ross. I literally thought they were calling to make an employment inquiry for someone who was applying for a job. Because I give a lot of references to former students and stuff like that. So, like, I was talking to phone while I'm driving. You're going to have to call me back. That was my response. Right. They said, well, what time should we call you back? I said, well, my class ends at 4. Call me at 4:30. Click.
Okay.
So when they called back at 4:30, I still had students kind of hanging around that desk because my class over there for. He said, are you alone? I said, well, I can't be. So I told the students to leave and shut the door behind them. Well, that's when they told me I got the award. So that's where I thought I would be calls. Here. Because I tend to think of genius as people smarter than me that I want to be, not as people like me who didn't even graduate college till I was 55, and so it never entered my head that, and see, that's the other thing, I never did anything by myself. I always had my best thoughts, like we would distance in the company of my sisters. I never had no brilliant thought by myself. I had brilliant thoughts that we stuck off each other and catalyzed stuff together. So that whole genius award stuff is, in my mind, kind of like a neoliberal capitalist awarding of the great man theory, when in fact is collectively we're stronger together. Because no, it's something I'll take money. I took the money, and what I've used the money for is a long-term care plan, because I have pre-existing health conditions, so I can't work that. For 20 years, I have tried to purchase long-term care insurance in case I end up in a nursing home or something. But the insurance companies are designed to only want healthy people. If you tell them you got anything wrong with you, they do not want you in a long-term care plan. And so I'm fucking not long-term care plan, so that last red, so it doesn't need to take care of it. So that's a spiritual for you.
Yep. As in this article that the structure that you use is binding for something so basic.
Well, yeah, but I'm not ready to integrate the candidate, huh? Yet.
Yeah.
Unless Elon Musk gets over Social Security and the Treasury Department at night.
Well, it's close, then. He's very close. Okay, here's my last question. Is your favorite cuss word? Favorite cuss word?
My favorite cuss word? That's an unexpected question. I didn't properly learn to curse. Now about develops like their pearls. My mother was such a strong evangelical Christian who didn't curse herself till she got dementia. And it started all the stuff she had to for all the history. That's it, she got dementia. Next thing I know, Bob was cursing like a sailor. I was like, wow, this is the mom. So I was 35 when I accidentally cursed her in front of my lover. Well, not in curse of the law, but never in front of mama. And when I let this still left drop in front of my mother, I drew back. She looked at me. I looked at her. And then we just pretended I had just farted.
What is dropping from there? And it ran? Oh, okay. Well, is that your baby house?
Yes, it is. And Goliath, you look, but never in front of her. I mean, you do. I'm a Southern girl. There are things you don't say in front of preachers, your mama. There are just things you just don't say. That's part of my training. And so it was. I'm not cursing in front of my mother. I could give myself permission to curse well until I was in my 20s, and then I always made sure I didn't do it in front of her, just like I didn't drink in front of her. I didn't show up in a see-through dress without a slip in front of her. I mean, there's some things that you don't do out of respect for your mama. And that was one of them.
So you didn't curse till you were 35.
I didn't curse in front of her until I was 35. I started cursing in my 20s, but I had a filter, and it just slipped out that time. Yeah. So my finger word is MF. And see, one of the things I really, really love is that when you're in higher education, around a lot of refiner speeches, their speaking patterns, as a matter of fact. And so the more proper they become, the more ghetto I become. I'm like, ooh, I'm going to show you what a peasant Negro looks like if he did. You know, and so that's where the MFs really roll off. Anyway, where she said that, you know, kind of stuff, but I actually stabilizing them. But I'm also sorry for them, because then he has to be very painful to work so hard to be educated away from your own work.
The mess we lived.
You know? And so these black people, mostly black women, who tell us about, there are black women I meet up in New England, and within 5 minutes, I know they have a house on the Cape, they go skiing, their favorite hobby is garden bee, and their grandfather went to college. If you're working that hard to show me that you belong to a certain class of black people, all you really to be is your insecurity. Because you don't have to brag on your education status if it's actually endemic to you. It's only when you're feeling insecure about it that I throw all of this in the first 10 minutes of conversation with you. So I go, Shanae. I go straight up, Shanae. That he crushed my impulse. Oh, I'm going to tell you about my family. We've been hog farmers in Texas since 1867. You want me to tell you about how you slaughter a hog? And it was out, he called it pig. A daddy would distinguish. I say hog. JWG. And stuff. I enjoyed them. I enjoyed the company of my sisters. I think there's too few black people, so we have to kind of cling to each other. But it hurts me to see how much of their blackness they feel compelled to sacrifice to fit into that New England culture. And in fact, the people in New England were just like white folks anyway. They just white folks like them, and you ain't have to act special around them, you know? It ain't that deep. It's just, but to me, like, that they feel so insecure feels very painful to me. I don't need to know that you went to that college or your daddy went to that college. It is just, and why is that our first conversation together? You know? And so I heard for him. I really didn't heard it for him. But I can't help but messing with the Shanae day. Maybe. Because that hurt swears with him. Well, so that isn't just there, because for white environments, the more African optical. Because that's my secularism. Take it over. So, you know, the whiter my environment, the more African I'm up here wearing the gay lay and the African clothes and pouring the libation and everything, kind of make sure that, no, I ain't relate that way. Kind of thing.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of IJS, Two Black Women with Opinions. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this podcast with your community. You can catch us on YouTube and all major podcast platforms. Stay connected, stay informed, and keep pushing for justice. We'll see you next time.